Welcome to the In Conversations sessions. And today we'll be talking about the cloud and cloud optimization. Now, before even going to that subject, I would like briefly want to touch base on the cloud evolution. Cloud computing is the on-demand availability of infrastructure for various organizations and mostly for the data storage and whenever you wanted it. That's how it came up. Some of them claim that the cloud computing allows companies to avoid and minimize upfront IT infrastructure costs and make established businesses quite faster and quicker. According to the IDC data available, the growth of the cloud is almost at 760 billion, and by 2025 it will be touching almost 1.3 trillion, which is actually huge in the growth. Basically, in the cloud is adopted for the cost reduction, location independency, and less maintenance. Also is coming for the performance and productivity. Availability and scalability also is a bigger requirement businesses which wanted to go fast and make it to the market very quickly. Further, there are also evolution of a lot of other models like the infrastructure as a services, PaaS, or maybe called function as a services. So a lot of these models have come to make cloud usable by the industry very easily and adopted. But those who do not believe in the public clouds, I think they went towards going to a private cloud, which means their own cloud, they set it up, or some of them leveraged both private and cloud as in a hybrid model. Cloud computing actually created a lot of jobs in the industry and market, which actually had made a lot of difference for the technology people to grow in their careers. With all this, and we have seen a lot of advantages and etc., but however, we have got an expert here to talk about what still can be done in the cloud to optimize it. So I would like to welcome Mr. Rohan Lobo from Deloitte as a partner to talk to us about the cloud optimization and how it goes up. So welcome, Rohan. I think nice to meet you and talk to you about this. So we have seen cloud is actually growing and making it a lot of difference for the organizations. And now, as an expert, you are talking about saying that some more optimizations. Can you just explain a bit on what is the optimization is about?
So Ramesh, thank you very much. Thank you for this opportunity and for Nasscom to speak on a very important topic, which is optimizing on cloud. Let us, as you have mentioned, the cloud market end user spend is increasing at a very rapid pace, 600 billion to 760 billion in the next couple of years, growing into trillions of dollars of spend. Also the industry is growing at a very rapid pace, 20-30%. I think if we look at senior management's conviction on whether cloud can solve their biggest problems, there is more than 90-95% conviction, and this is across geographies, across regions. And if you ask senior executives that where do they stand on their strategic initiatives, where do they feel they need to be on the innovation quotient, research that we have done shows that there is about a 15% gap. So for example, if they say that hyper-personalization is an area that they want to focus on, and if they put a score of 60% in terms of where they stand, they believe that if there is innovation, it could go to 75%. They need to be 75%. But if they adopt cloud, they could go beyond that particular 75%. So the strategic imperative is very, very high. Huge investments going into cloud. But if you speak to senior executives, they are a little anxious about how the spends are happening. More and more we're hearing that less than a third of the programs are for cloud migration are actually on budget and on time. And just about 30%, they believe that around 30% of the spends is going to waste. Now, if you say that, as per Gartner, 2023 spends is $600 billion and 30% is $180 billion. That's
a huge number.
That's a huge number. And if you just apply a multiple from business value standpoint of, 10x of earnings, because this is going directly to bottom line.
That's right.
You're looking at something like $1.8 trillion of business value lost. So the imperative to optimize this is very, very huge. So it is not just the cost. I think it's the business value. It's the valuation of the company, shareholder valuation of the company that makes it imperative to optimize on costs.
Okay, that's interesting. So obviously, what you are suggesting is the cloud optimization is not just an optimization for the infrastructure, but it's actually the business value creation.
Absolutely, absolutely. It is the way, if you were to talk about an equation that explains the concept better, we say business value is equal to cloud spending plus innovation.
Excellent.
And it's optimizing of cloud spending, optimizing of innovation, which combines to create business value. And just last week, Deloitte has come out with a report, an evaluation of nearly 4,500 companies and what they have written in their annual reports. And it shows that the valuation of market leaders is significantly higher when they talk about specific cloud initiatives, they talk about specific initiatives around digital transformation, technology transformation, but also cultural enablement. So there are a number of concepts. It's not just cloud spending optimization. When we look at cloud, it's not just the performance optimization of instances that have gone onto cloud, but it's a much wider perspective of getting the business value and innovation quotient up.
Excellent. And I know that you are by career, you're a chartered accountant turned to be technologist based on your enthusiasm or deep insights into something else. So keeping those is in mind, and I understand what the valuation you're talking about for the business is really makes sense. Now, if you really need to add value into the optimization, what are the major components that might be required to look at from a business perspective to increase the valuation?
So I'll answer that question in terms of some examples, Ramesh. I think COVID really created a watershed moment in terms of companies deciding to go on cloud. So many of the cloud conferencing solutions came in. Many of the companies started moving their cloud applications that were there on premise onto cloud. But what happened was you had a situation where people came into it without doing a proper assessment. They lifted and shifted applications because that was really the business need at that point in time. They lifted and shifted applications and they moved immediately to cloud.
To the cloud, okay.
But not looking at what kind of, each cloud operator has got a different way of billing. Each cloud operator has a different business term. Each cloud operator has different performance guarantees. So you have a number of complexities that are going in. And when you do a lift and shift of applications, you don't make use of everything that the cloud operator has to provide.
Absolutely.
So just to give you an example, let's take a company that had some on-premise systems. They had business systems, they had a product system, they had research and development systems, and they had data analytics. And they moved to cloud. So what we have seen is that when the first bill comes, it's significantly high. And then you start going in and seeing what's happening. So what we've seen is four broad components. We've seen waste, we've seen consumption optimization that hasn't been looked at, we've seen contracting issues that people haven't seen, and we've seen architectural issues that we have not seen. So for example, when we say waste, you would have instances that are running that have not been shut down even though they're not being used.
Okay.
When we say consumption, we see that thresholds have not been established and therefore the bills go, it's a runaway bill. When you see contracting, you see multi-cloud environments, some of them, looking at usage-based, some of them volume, time-based, some of them a combination of it, some of them with SLAs, some of them without SLAs. So what application needs to go on which cloud to make the maximum use of business, that has not been looked at from a contracting standpoint. But the most important thing I feel is the architectural aspect. So I'll give you an example. There is a company that decided to take its HR systems and move it to cloud. So the first thing they did during COVID was they took the application, moved it to cloud, lift and shift. But then they realized bills are coming higher and higher. So they looked at the architecture. They made the application PaaS enabled. They looked at integrations from API perspective. They looked at auto scaling. They looked at various aspects of automation, not just in the workflow that manages the application, but also in the user workflows.
Excellent.
But the North Star was very important. The North Star the company decided for itself in moving its human capital applications is to say that how do I reduce my time to market in terms of hiring? How do I reduce that or increase the automation that is required for hiring process. And with those goals, how do I optimize the architecture? What kind of architectural choices do I use? What kind of automation do I establish so that I am not having runaway builds? What is the optimized, which is the best cloud provider that I need to choose?
Yep.
And then, we saw a dramatic reduction in cost, but also a dramatic increase in performance and efficiency, which the company appreciated. The 30% spend, we believe that around 15, based on our research, we believe around 15% can come from managing waste, managing consumption, even contracting.
Okay.
But there is a 15 to 20% benefit that can come in by architectural changes.
Excellent. In fact, I think you answered my questions, which rather you read my mind. One of the thought process was when I'm trying to do optimization of an existing environment, which basically has got implementation of the other components coming in. Like you mentioned about the architecture, applications design and the coding, what they've done, and maybe the access to the end users as well. So now keeping all that in mind and we need to do it, does it require any special skills within the organization that need to come in? Or every cloud operator can do something about? Or is just going to be an operational model which need to be changed?
I think, Ramesh, very, very valid point. You've been in industry for decades. Infrastructure was a skill set which was commoditized. You had database administrators, system administrators who used to manage. That is absolutely not the skill that is required currently. I think from a cloud standpoint, the skills required are engineering skills. The skills required are automation skills. But it's also important that some of these skills are merged with business knowledge. So for example, the ask from today's technology skills that support cloud environment is what we call purple people, which is a combination of business people plus technology, business skills plus technology skills, but also with a significant amount of automation capabilities and a significant amount of engineering capabilities, because the need is to take these applications that have potentially going to go on cloud or are already on cloud and re-engineer them. So that you're able to make the maximum use of a technology that is constantly changing very rapidly also.
Agreed.
So the skills required are very different. I think also if I were to add beyond skills, Ramesh, I think there is a need for cultural change within the organization. So for example, if we have a situation of cloud environment and the costs are going runaway, one of the solutions for that is to have a FinOps team or a central cloud center of excellence team. And the way I look at it is also not only skills, but a culture and operating model potentially also has to be changed, because you now need the teams to not work in silos, but you need the teams to combine business knowledge, technology with engineering, architecture. So you really need the thinkers and the doers.
Right.
The thinkers predominantly managing delivery, managing architecture, managing FinOps, and then you have a delivery or a doer team which looks at operations and provisioning and governance and security and some of those aspects. So the skills are going to be very different. Companies need to optimize the costs they're going to put in from a skill, and that also goes into the choice of a cloud environment. Or an abstraction layer that can enable multi-cloud environment to be managed better, but also cultural aspects and the operating model to deliver on this benefit is going to be very important.
Right, good. And you also touched based upon one of the aspect of the security aspect of it. Yeah. And security and governance in cloud is a very big thing. And organizations, unless they have a built-in trust with the service provider, it's very difficult to operate or service these areas. Now, what kind of security changes that might be requiring here, or is the governance model need to change? Because as I understand, as we're speaking about, it's not just about making the code or things to work, but basically beyond that to look for some of the parameters which are likely to change and impact the business valuation there. Can you just touch base on a couple of them?
So it's security is, I think the security risks are already high and are potentially going to be higher because of the complexity in the development and complexity of the environment that is potentially going to come. I think what's happening is security was largely looked at from a data standpoint, and whether it is data in rest, data in flight, and how data is being accessed and who is going to access that and all that. I think there's a far more focus on that. The risk I see is in the application layer. Many vulnerabilities are coming, especially in the application layer, given that applications are talking to various other applications through APIs and in some cases with on-premise and off-premise. I think
That's right, yeah.
Around 25% of the infrastructure is still on-premise. So as you move from cloud to on-premise, you have risks that can come in. The way I would look at it is, one of the best things about cloud is that you have native tools that can support in cloud. Fundamentally, the company is responsible to manage its environment from a security standpoint. You do have tools, but as the maturity of the security team goes up, you have a situation where you may have cloud native tools that are enabling it, but then you may layer it with additional tools that can support in terms of both application as well as data security. And then slowly you move up the maturity curve in terms of how these two tools, rather than being layered on top of each other, are getting integrated and supported. And then moving up the maturity curve in terms of making it more proactive, auto alerts and auto remediation activities, and then also in the final stages of preventive. But Ramesh, there is a cost involved through this journey. So what is the right fit for the organization is a very important thing that needs to be evaluated by the organization itself. Because if you start trying to copy from another organization or copy from one other environment to another environment which is not relevant to your organization, you may again end up with a significant bill, and sometimes you may not even address some of the vulnerabilities. So getting that right fit that can support your security objectives is going to be a crucial.
Right. So if I hear you right, Rohan, you are suggesting to not to be under peer pressure.
Yes.
But try to evaluate your own model and see what is the benefits for you and take it forward.
Absolutely. I think that applies to all aspects of cloud, whether it is in terms of the choice of cloud, whether in terms of the which cloud you're going to choose, but also in terms of which services you're going to pick, how you're going to configure your environment, how you're going to engineer your platforms. It's going to be a choice. And we now see a trend actually, Ramesh, that some of the applications that have been moved onto cloud that no longer need that kind of support from the cloud are being repatriated back onto premises, on-premise. So it's a very crucial thing to kind of constantly assess what your environment is from the perspective of how it is adding value to the business, how it is adding value to security, how it is adding value to your actually end consumers and the users, and then to evaluate with the constantly changing environment of cloud and the technologies and capabilities being provided by the cloud providers, to look at how you optimize on cost. It's a continuous activity, whether it is security, whether it is application. If I were to take a military terminology, Ramesh, I think you have this concept of OODA, OODA, which is observe, orient, decide and act. Observe, orient, decide and act. So the old days, I think in the past, when 20 or 30 years back, we used to review some of the risks one time during the year, and then look at the controls and establish those controls, and broadly you would create a monitoring system. But today it's quite different. You have to observe constantly, you have to orient constantly, you have to decide and act. And I may dare to say that we probably have to use some special forces terminology of cover and move. Okay. Which is, you don't know where the threat vectors are going to come from a security standpoint, for example, or from an optimization objective standpoint. And you have to constantly be alert at it and move. So the skills, as you mentioned, are very different. It is not a one-time skill. It is an empowered team.
Yeah. Now that brings me another question, or rather two questions for that matter. One, is there a defined tech stack for this optimization to move in? Second, the question otherwise, now the global capability centers have grown in India, and I think we are doing a great business. How are those people likely to leverage these services? Or is there a paradigm shifting towards creating a different service industry itself?
Yeah. So the tech stack exists. Most of all the cloud providers, cloud service providers have tools that enable you to optimize your instances and to reduce, or at least to show you where wastage is occurring, and for keeping thresholds on budgets and so on. So the tools exist. I'm quite excited about the opportunity of AI in ops, because when you have a multi-cloud environment, which in 80-90% of the cases it is a multi-cloud environment, you have to have an abstraction layer and you have to have AI ops in order to manage the complexity which is significantly there. But the choice of the tools is a fit-for-purpose decision that an organization has to take, given the context it has, and also based on the priority of the applications that are there on cloud. So the tech stack, again, it is not a one-size-fits-all. There is a reference architecture that most cloud operators provide. There are industry-specific clouds that help in the certain aspects. For example, in healthcare, if you want HIPAA compliance, or the payment card industry, if you want compliance, there are some of these tech stacks that enable your
the
operations.
data privacy will come into the place now.
Absolutely.
Because the privacy of access data and kind of these things also
GDPR and all of that will come in. But the opportunity for GCCs is tremendous. Because I have a concept called Delivery 100. And what does Delivery 100 mean? GCCs, when they started, used to do operations and support. Then they slowly moved into development and build. Then they slowly moved into data analytics and technology implementations. But the big opportunity I'm seeing, given that GCCs are being change agents for their parent organizations, given that most of the data is residing within the GCCs, the product owner capability, the business capability is coming into GCC. So the benefit to the parent organization is that it can deliver end to end, and given the wide information that is available within GCCs are able to make better decisions and all. In cloud, that is what is essential. So if you want to have a center of excellence and you have silos of finance teams sitting in one place and having a perspective which is very different from the technology or the engineering teams, and which is very different from the business teams, that can be less optimal in terms of decision making when it comes to optimization deals. So GCCs play a huge role because they could be the center of excellence where the FinOps, the architecture decisions, and the delivery management could play a big role in terms of getting all parties together and having a common lens and a common conversation around continuous assessment of the environment, which applications are to be prioritized, deprioritized, what could be those choices in terms of cloud decisions, what could be those choices in terms of contracting, how do you make the best out of those contracting, what tools to deploy, and most importantly, because this is the smaller part of it, most importantly in terms of re-engineering the platforms. The whole benefit is going to come when GCCs, which have access to all this data, is able to leverage that data and leverage the knowledge it has to re-engineer the platforms, to make them more cloud native, and then extract the benefits out of significant automation that may come about, and in terms of leveraging the cloud assets and resources in a very optimized way to provide benefit to the cloud.
Maybe this may be my last question there is, who should consider optimization, and what is the ROI expected out of this optimization? Because we already believe that cloud is optimized and easiest access, but now that you mentioned that 30% things are going in waste.
Yeah.
Now, out of the 30%, how much we can leverage, or all 30% will come back? By changing this, I know you are also talking about value addition. So which one should I consider, and maybe can we briefly touch upon that?
So it's very interesting, Ramesh. You are talking about who should be taking ownership for cloud decisions. It used to be the CIO. It is not necessarily the CIO today. It is today becoming a CEO's agenda. And why is it becoming a CEO's agenda? Because the CEO has to deliver on innovation, and the CEO has to ensure capabilities exist within the organization to deliver on that particular innovation. So we are seeing large number of boardroom conversations in terms of how cloud is going to enable business to be very differentiated. What is the benefit of cloud? Cloud is enabling democratization of access to resources for anybody to.
That's right.
Anybody to use resources. So I could, as a startup, one-man startup, leverage the same resources that is available to a mega corporation, a multinational corporation, which means the innovation quotient has to become high if companies need to go through, compete in the marketplace. And if that is the case, then implementing cloud is very important. But it has to be a cloud efficient, an optimized value in terms of how it is going. It's a journey, it is a continuous journey. But it's not just the agenda of the CIO organization alone. It becomes the CEO and also the ExCo, because the marketing team is equally interested in leveraging cloud for getting insights on customers. The finance team is equally interested in ensuring that a cloud environment reduces their cost of finance, digital finance, for example, reducing the number of people doing reports and getting them.
Yep.
The CIO is interested in cloud as an enabler for the overall business. So having an optimized cloud which is serving, and that is why I say business value is equal to cloud spending plus innovation. And innovation is an interesting question, Ramesh. If I were to say, I've seen companies use a 2x2 matrix in terms of innovation velocity and the cost of cloud, or the business value of cloud. And sometimes companies, from an optimization standpoint, sometimes you'll have a runaway CIO organization that focuses a lot on innovation. And then questions come in terms of how did it move the needle in terms of business outcomes, or how did it move the needle in terms of its own people experiences, or how did it move the needle in terms of adoption. And it becomes very crucial to bring all this together at a higher level. And therefore it becomes somewhat of a CEO's agenda.
Excellent. I think the summary of this appears to me is that the moment optimization, I'm going to make my CEO happy.
Yes.
Even the CFO will be more happier because he's saving money. Shareholder will obviously be happy because they get. And I'm sure the services user also get benefit because optimized services will be available and access to the various systems that will be faster into that one.
Yes.
Thank you for us taking through this journey.
Thank you, Ramesh. Thank you very much. Really appreciate this.